typewriter N and a typewriter S. Dollars. It is February 17th. And I'll read the dark print. When you get down there, what is the 3-pipe problem? You read that, and then I'll read the other part, because it doesn't work for us all to read together. So, we're all finished with this 3-pipe problem. Okay, here we go. What is the nature of this meeting? Oh, hi.
Oh, God.
And what group is this? By whose authority do you come by that name? That's right. What is a 3-pipe problem? And I'll read, yes, in the Red-Headed League, Dr. Watson asked Holmes what he planned to do to solve the problem. What was his reply? Everybody? To smoke. The more bizarre the thing is, the less mysterious it proves to be. It is quite a 3-pipe problem. Okay, that's all we've got.
Those evangelical roots never stop.
I'm telling you, it really was.
Just a little note taking here. Next month, we're gonna meet at the Stalls house. Yes,
Can I make a note?
please do. Yes, this is your.
You all are most welcome to come to our house because we won't be able to host you in July. The difference will be I am going to provide all the food and drink. So all you have to do is your price of entry is at least 3 books.
Oh, you have to take them.
And possibly as many as you want. So anyway, Gail is having a heart, Gail is giving away his heart because these books are his heart and soul.
Yeah.
And we moved to Indianapolis and we can no longer get them in anywhere. So anyway, so I hope that you'll come and appreciate his collection, and I'll have both vegetarian and meat food. So if you don't, and other things and drinks. So don't bother to bring anything.
I want you all to know that I spent thousands of dollars to get this collection. So you're really gonna get some good stuff if you want it. And I know you'll enjoy it more than I did, because I forgot I even had some. It's amazing, I collected some good stuff.
Are you gonna
Come and get it.
Are you gonna start a chapter in Indianapolis, or is there already one there?
My favorite family lives there, and I go up there all the time, all year long.
Except
But
the family we stayed with.
I just moved there.
We went to Indianapolis way
Be
back
with
out
them,
on the river.
and that's a good place to go
So
die.
People are moving.
And
They moved.
and I'm 84,
Please.
and I'll probably die between now and 100 or
And-
something.
They're great. Y'all are gonna be together.
So, and
Right.
his
It's also
daughter
next
and
to,
son live there.
The library,
We'll have
First
lots and
Indiana
lots of
Library,
help.
which, houses the,
So, yeah.
Would you like to bread?
And it's
well,
a-
it houses
not each
the,
one a lake.
basically the regular
Can
office,
be
the archives. I spent some time up there earlier this year, or last year, with doing some research and, so you're gonna have a big group of Sherlockians to be with us up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you.
Oh, yeah, they're a good group up there.
They're very active.
Yeah.
Well,
They're-
we-
they're-
Biggest Wiggins, Mike Whelan was the.
Well, and one thing that as you were telling, as y'all were talking, I remember way back, we went up to a conference in Indianapolis, and I stayed with you and Susan and your friends out north of Indianapolis on the White River.
Right.
Yeah.
They lived right on the river near Butler University, I think.
Yeah.
And but they had these big fat red squirrels that lived there. And they were they looked like dogs. They were huge. And they fed them on the back porch. So half the entertainment was just what. So Susan was telling me y'all are going to be with them. Though they're great people. He's going to be in good hands. I'm not going to say we won't miss him and miss you, but I know you're going to personally, y'all are going to be well taken care of. Good folks.
Yeah, my heart's kind of going both ways, because I
Yeah.
sure miss you guys. You're my favorite people. And And I helped start the group, you know, back, actually, I thought it was 1978, but, he said it was 79.
79.
So, my memory's getting bad.
That's when we got the word from Julian Wolf that we were.
But I'll miss you guys much more than you'll miss me.
You know, Gail was a retired priest when he came here.
Yeah,
And one time we went up to Door County, Wisconsin. And when we got to Chicago, we stayed in the priest home up there. What do you call it?
that was in.
A rectory.
The
Rectory.
the first
Rectory.
black, big black cathedral,
Yeah,
in Chicago.
yeah,
And you stayed in that.
I sure
that
did.
big
I'll never
cathedral,
forget.
yeah.
The only rectory I've ever stayed in, you know, but.
You reckon it?
Oh, okay, that's his line.
Yeah, that's
Boy,
right.
Did you feed him?
No, that'd be a correctory if I.
I'm gonna move on.
Thank you.
Anyway, let's go on with our meeting today, and we're gonna get some folks coming in here at 11:30. I see them up there already. Susan, Allen, oh, wow, we're honored, I'll tell you. Anybody else have anything to say before we do show and tell? Any show and tell? Anybody?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's tell, there's no shot.
Okay, no show.
My clothes on. You're probably aware of the upcoming TV series just with Watson featured in contemporary setting. It may be this fall, I'm not sure, it's in development. But now I've read about yet another Sherlock and Daughter. And it will star David Thewlis. You can see him as Sherlock. He's a good actor, but there's something just odd about him. I'm having trouble, and I don't know whether it's going to be contemporary set or in proper 1890s. It was not clear about that, but somehow the daughter is one he discovers he has, and I think it's Irene Adler's daughter, something like that, so. But she helps him solve this climate, and it's not even clear whether it's a mini series with a story arc or a weekly series with individual episodes. It's kind of fuzzy at this point, so, with luck, it won't show up, but you never know. So, just thought I'd give you a heads up alert. Morning.
Okay. Lily?
Show and tell. Jeff, you had something?
No.
Anybody have anything that needs to be told? Well, God.
Bill, I've got a lot of, the Baker Street, things that you haven't do, don't you?
The Baker Street Journal,
Uh-huh.
I have a few holes in it, not too many.
I want you to get them and keep them for everybody. But I don't know when you started collecting. I started in 1947.
Wow.
Well, I've got, the newest one I don't have is from 1964.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'll check it when I go home.
but I've got a list somewhere. I'll have to.
Oh, good.
He's
I'll
only got
send it
one
to you.
thing
Let me
there
see. Oh, God.
that he's got to
Thank
say,
you.
I'll let you.
Yeah, I got them all in order. Boy, it took me 2 days.
Here, they're talking about the Baker Street Journal. I got 6 copies.
Oh, wow, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, this is the winter edition, and these are extras. I have one that I have subscription, but they sent these. Actually, they're contributor copies. They messed up because they already sent me contributor copies for the Christmas journal, which I edited. They send the editor the thing, but these are extra, so I'm gonna put them out here. If you don't have a subscription to it, these are for people who don't have a subscription to
The
it.
good news.
There you go.
He probably won't know.
One copy, boy.
And I hate to say that.
I got a question, Gail.
Okay, question, Gail?
Gail,
Gail, question?
I sent you the thing about Eric Stone Street's farm in Weal. Did you check that out at all?
What did you say?
Ask him, honey.
Like,
Somebody's farm in Eos.
Eric
Are you-
Stone, it was a TV program. It was the.
Yeah, right.
Y'all check that out?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
yeah.
We were, our ancestors were neighbors.
Thank you.
Our ancestors were neighbors.
Yeah. I remember you sending that. Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Well, too bad.
I'm hoping they'll mess up every month. Ah,
Where's the,
what else?
where's the farm?
Well,
It's about.
anything else?
30 miles south of Kansas City, but it's not even a town, it's a farming collection, you know, maybe 50 people. No, it isn't even a co-op, it's just a bunch of farmers who are in location. Who's the black guy that does the ancestry thing on public television? Henry Gates.
Yeah.
Yeah, Henry Gates. And he was doing this program with Eric Stone Street, who's from Kansas City, the comedian. And turned out, you know, my great grandfather and Eric Stone Street's great grandfather were next door neighbors. And Gail is from that same, his family's from the same community.
Wow.
I guess we're ready for the story today, which is Drew Thomas.
What would you like, Jeff?
Famous Sherlock. He's gonna
Want
come
me up
down
here?
here so we can get a good camera on him, yeah.
You know, Drew, I almost read the story, but I did watch it on TV twice and made Donna watch it twice.
Oh,
So
good.
she now knows more about the Naval Treaty than I know.
Were you contemplating the naval?
Absolutely.
Sorry,
I say, I knew you couldn't help it.
I just can't help myself. Um,
Hi, everybody.
need to be able to see the screen, so. Let me try my other glasses. But these are very old. I could see some things better with them. But they're too big for my head and they fall off, so.
Did you hit?
There we go.
After you bought him? What happened?
Maybe I could see it with these. Let me give it a shot. Okay, so we're talking today about the Naval Treaty. There were two stories or cases that Watson brought to Holmes. This was one of them. What was the other one? I thought you were giving me the clue.
Commissioner's
The
thumb,
engineer's
perhaps.
So Watson received a letter from his old friend Percy Phelps. He hasn't seen in years. He went to school with him. And maybe you could go, I wish I could control that. Hit the end key. And here we go. Watson gives us a list of great things about Percy Phelps. He was a brilliant guy, same age as Watson, but 2 classes ahead of him in school. He had all these honors, he got scholarships, and he was well connected. His mother was the sister of Lord Holdhurst, who was a big wig in the Foreign Office. So all these things, but the next screen, this gobsmacks. I'm gobsmacked when I read Watson, our great empathetic person one of the most empathetic people on the planet. And he was a school bully. He whacked this guy in the shins. So he mentions that.
You know those little English schoolboys, they're hellions, right?
With that,
Those little English schoolboys are hellions when they get out on the,
oh man, yeah.
you know, out on the recess. They're good in class.
Yeah.
Turn them loose, they're.
But a lot of the boys' school has this tradition, isn't it, like? Joining, yeah, initiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
So-
nickname they gave him too.
I'm sorry?
The nickname they gave him.
Yeah, Tadpole.
Yeah.
So, so we got a lot of glorious things about him. And because he's well connected with his uncle, Lord Holdhurst, who was in the Foreign Office and kind of a big wig, he ended up with a career there. But now something bad happened. He writes in a letter, actually he dictates a letter to Watson, asking him to bring Sherlock Holmes down to his house in Brisbane. And so Watson brings the letter to Holmes. I guess you can go on the next slide. And Holmes is working on his side table on the chemical things. As Watson walks in, Holmes says, "You come at a crisis." He's working on litmus paper. He says, if the paper turns blue, everything's okay, but if it turns red, it is a man's life. What color does it turn?
Dark
Red.
crimson, yes.
Not good.
So now, so they go to Brisbane, which is the place where Percy Phelps lives.
So that was like early testing like we do now for COVID and pregnancy tests and that kind of thing? Boy, what a guy.
What a guy.
Oh, look,
Man,
in
he
your,
was-
in your paternity suits, they, they bring out.
Oh, yeah, I remember those tests.
Yeah, right.
There were lots of them, as I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, well, different story.
What does the red mean? There's acid present? Does the color, the red color,
Yes,
mean acid was present? And that would be.
I don't know if you're more of a chemist than I am, because I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
No.
So Watson shows the letter to Holmes that he got from Percy Phelps. He says, well, it looks like he didn't write it. And Holmes says, no, you're right. It was a woman. And Watson says, no, a man for sure, you know. He says, no, it was a woman's writing and a woman of rare character. So Holmes decides to take the case. They go down to Brisbane. Yeah, okay, you got it. So, first person they meet in the house is Joseph Harrison. And Watson describes him as a little heavyweight. But the first thing Holmes says to him is, oh, you're not a member of the family, I perceive. And Joseph Harrison starts like, what? How did he know that? You know, but then he looks down at his chest. He's like, oh, you see the GH monogram on my chest. For a moment, I thought you had done something clever.
Hmm.
Now, last month, Jeff gave a great presentation, and in it, he had a whole slide or more than one slide on things that Doyle had said twice in the canon in two different places. So he has a good list of it. This is one, this statement that for a moment, I thought you had done something clever. If you remember back in the Redheaded League with Jabez Wilson, Holmes says to Wilson, well, other than the fact that you're an asthmatic, a Freemason, and you've been to China, I know nothing whatever about you. And Wilson is like, can you explain what's all this about? And Holmes, of course, the breathing, the pin for the Freemasons. And he had a tattoo on his wrist that had, and Holmes said that delicate shade of pink is only found in China. And Jabez Wilson says, well, I never. For a moment, I thought you had done something clever, but now I see there's nothing to it at all. And Holmes turns to Watson and he said, well, I should stop explaining myself. But anyway, there's that, you know, for a moment, I thought you had done something clever. Another thing that Doyle pulled out of his bag of tricks. So Watson describes Annie Harrison. I'm amused by that statement that says she was a little short and thick for symmetry. But anyway, she's a beautiful woman, other than that. Beautiful, large, dark Italian eyes and an olive complexion. And she is Joseph's sister, and she's also Percy Phelps's fiance. So they meet her, and so I need to read some of this. Percy gives his own account, tells Watson about his story. He got the job in the Foreign Office. And his uncle was a high wig in there. And one day his uncle calls him into the office, his office, and says, look, I have a top secret thing. You can't let a word out. It's starting to leak out in the press, but we can't let it go any further. I have a treaty that between England and Italy, if Russia or France could get their hands on it, they'd do anything to get it. You can't let this leak out, but I need you to copy it tonight. And don't even tell your office mate, because the offices had two people in it. And spend the night, get it done, lock it in your drawer. Don't even work on it while your office mate until he goes home. And then bring it to me personally in the morning. So that's what Percy Phelps does. He starts to
he actually goes out to dinner because his office mate is still there. When he comes back, the guy's gone. He pulls the document. It's in French. It's very long. And he's spending the night carefully prescribing this. It comes to a point where he's starting to get fatigued. And so he needs some coffee. And the way the office is structured, his office comes out onto a corridor. There's a stairway that goes downstairs. It's kind of curves, goes down to a landing. There's another corridor that goes out to the street. If you go all the way to the bottom, another set of steps, there's what they call the Commissioner's Lodge. The commissioner is a guy who he's like a night watchman. People come in and off the street and he can see who's coming and going. And when people work late, he makes coffee for them if they want. So Percy Phelps thinks that's a good idea. He pulls the bell, the bell pull, which alerts that he wants something. And then who should come in but a woman? And he says, "Who are you?" She says, "Well, I'm the commissioner's wife. I'm the charwoman. I work here." He's a little tired, but he sent me up to find out what you want. So Percy says, "Well, if you can make me some coffee, that would be great." So then she goes down. And Percy continues working on the document. And suddenly he realizes, that coffee should be here by now. So he gets up and he walks downstairs, goes to the commissioner's lodge. The coffee's boiling over. The commissioner is like fagged out. He's dead tired. He's just out. And Percy turns the coffee off. He's trying to wake the guy up. Then he hears the bell, a bell, and that's what wakes up Tangy is his name, the commissioner. And he says, "Well, if you're here, sir, who's ringing the bell?" Percy's like, "What bell? What's that about?" "That's the bell to your room, sir." It's like, okay, so panic sets in. Oh my God, he's got to run up the steps. And when he gets to his office, there's nobody there. Somebody has pulled the bell pull, but nobody's there. And the document is gone.
No.
And now panic sets in. They start running all over the place. The commissioner runs with them. They walk out to the street. They find a policeman. And all the suspicions, could it be the guy's wife, the charwoman? They call the police. Investigation is done, and they can't find anything. And Percy realizes now it sets in, and he has like a nervous breakdown of sorts. They have to bundle him out and bring him down to Brisbane. They bring him into the house. Joseph was staying with them, the almost brother-in-law, and but because they knew that he would be in for a long illness, Percy was put into his bedroom, and Joseph was moved out. And he was out. He said, "I suffered from brain fever for 9 weeks," so that Victorian malady,
Yeah.
brain fever.
It's in every story.
So this is the situation. And Holmes is brought down and he has a surprising comment. First of all, he asks some questions and he listens to the story. And let's see, where's my other one? So Holmes then starts to make a comment and he interrupts himself. And I have to read this whole thing because I think this is important. He's starting to talk, one of the inspectors from Scotland Yard is named Forbes. And Holmes says, "I have no doubt I can get details from Forbes. The authorities are excellent at amassing facts, though they do not always use them to advantage." What a lovely thing a rose is. There's nothing in which deduction is so necessary as in religion. It can be built up as an exact science by the reasoner. Our highest assurance of the goodness of Providence seems to me to rest in the flowers. All other things, our powers, our desires, our food, are really necessary for our existence in the first instance. But this rose is an extra. Its smell and its color are an embellishment of life, not a condition of it. It is only goodness which gives extras. And so I say again that we have much to hope from the flowers. So now Joseph Harrison, Annie, Percy sitting around looking askance at one another like, what the heck is all this about? And so Annie goes up and asks Holmes, you know, do you have any clues? Oh, yeah, the case, the clues, yeah, you furnished me with 7 clues. He said, well, do you see any way it could lead? It's like, no, I have to go to London and test them. And Annie says, okay, I think maybe you should go to London and test them then. So she didn't say it in a bad way, but she was a very practical person. So, but this whole statement of Holmes's brings up the question of what was his religion? What was his faith? What did he believe? And if you look at the screen on the right is the illustration that Sidney Paget did for the magazine. And he's using his brother Walter as a model. And next to him is Jeremy Brett emulating that scene in the BBC version. Well, what is Holmes's religion then? We think back to the Boston Valley mystery, where you remember the young McCarthy was put on trial for the murder of his father, and Holmes thought he was innocent. And he tracked down the real perpetrator, who was an elderly man, very ill, didn't have long to live. And Holmes sort of told him that he found him out, and he wanted him to write a confession. So they wrote it out, the guy signed it. He says, what do you intend to do? And Holmes says, well, if McCarthy is found guilty, I know he's innocent, then I'll be forced to produce this. But if he's let go, nobody will ever see this, whether you're with us or not, you know, whether you're dead or alive, your secret's safe with us, nobody will find out. You're going to a higher court than the assizes, and you'll be judged there. So there's a bit about his religious thinking. And next he says to Watson, you know, when I hear a case like this, I can't help but think, you know, there but for the grace of God goes Sherlock Holmes. So is that just a social commentary that we all make, because we all do? Or in this context, is it really part of his belief? And then there's the story of the crooked man who Henry, and he was in the military, he was stationed in India, and his sergeant was Sergeant James Barclay. And Barclay was jealous of him because he had this beautiful young woman that was on his arm all the time, that, you know, they looked like they would get married after he, and Henry was really a good looking, attractive man. So, but Barclay sent him through the lines on purpose to try to get him ambushed and killed. He was ambushed. He was very badly hurt because he was tortured. And when he came back to London or England years and years later, he was all crippled and crooked from his injuries. And he happened to go to the Watt Street Chapel where his ex-girlfriend, now James Barclay's wife, he swiped her. And they married, and she's going to help this old man who's bent over and crooked in the chapel. And she recognizes it in his eyes. And she says, I thought you were dead these 30 years. He says, I have been. So she leaves the chapel, she goes home, and that night she has a hideous argument, very loud, with her husband. And they could hear through the doors are locked, but they could hear the argument. And she's like, David, 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 like she's angry. So when Holmes solves the case at the end, Watson says, there's one thing I don't get. If the husband was James and the other guy was Henry, what's all this word about David? And Holmes says, if I had been the ideal reasoner that you depict me as, you know, I would have solved this long ago. I should have known. It's in the Bible. You know, it's in the first or second book of Samuel. You'll find the story about David and Bathsheba, where he sent Uriah off into battle so he could, you know, steal his woman. So, so one wonders on Holmes's, he knew about the Bible. He was exposed to it. Was he, like Doyle, raised in a Catholic family? Or was he sent to a Jesuit school to study? He must have been exposed to the Bible. He read this at one time. Maybe when he grew older, he stopped going to church or chapel or whatever. So he hadn't read it in a long time. He said himself in that quote, I'm a trifle rusty at the Bible. Excuse me. So, and then we have in the Sign of the Four in chapter 2, Holmes says to Watson, look, I got to go out for an hour. I'll be back in an hour. But here's a book I recommend you read. It's Winwood Reade, The Martyrdom of Man.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know much about Reade. I haven't read the book, but I read enough to see that he was a contemporary of Charles Darwin, and he was in correspondence with him, and it influenced him in writing this book. Well, in chapter 10, Holmes brings the book up again when Holmes, Watson, and Athelney Jones are on a stakeout across from a shipyard. They're waiting for a certain individual to show up. So they're looking at this dirty-faced people working hard. And Holmes says, you know, they all looked like all these, you know, a lot of dirt on them and all. But Winwood Reade is good about the case, and he talks about having the immortal spark. Well, this idea of the immortal spark, or the divine spark, it's like a pantheistic view that God is a word that describes the universe and everything in it. And from this view, we're all part of God. So therefore we are God and we have the divine spark within us. Whereas the Christian view and compatible with the Jewish view is that God is a personal creator who created the universe outside of himself. That's the way Christian theologian and scholar Francis Schaeffer put it. So Holmes at least was open-minded on this. So, and then of course, during the hiatus, when everybody thinks Holmes is dead, when he comes back in The Adventure of the Empty House, and he tells Watson what he's been doing all these years, and he says, well, I went for 2 years in Lhasa, and I met the High Lama, who is the high priest in Tibet. So evidently there was a misprint or a typo in the first edition of the book. They spelled Lama with 2 L's. So this inspired Ogden Nash to write this poem. Let me get closer so I can read it. The 1 L, Lama, he's a priest. The 2 L, Yama, he's a beast. And I will bet a silk pajama there isn't any 3 L, Lama. How would you pronounce it if there were 3 L's in it? So, okay, so now we're back to the investigation. Yeah, Holmes says the most difficult crime to track is the one that is purposeless, but this one is not purposeless. Who stands to gain from the money from this document? So that's the trail that's going on. And they review Percy's story. Tom, you mentioned the bell ringing, you know, so we heard that from Percy's story. Now they're reviewing that. And Holmes asks a number of questions of himself or of that situation, and then he stops in mid-sentence, and Watson realizes that Holmes maybe has discovered something. He's not revealing it yet. And So what are the other possible suspects? Because we already have Annie Harrison, Percy himself, and Joseph Harrison. Now, what about the?
The charwoman,
Right.
the wife of the.
Yeah, you got it.
Commissioner.
The commissioner. No,
Commissioner himself.
that's okay. Yeah, the commissioner's wife, and Lord Holdhurst. So the wife, Holmes goes to speak with Forbes. And Forbes talks about the commissioner himself, Tangy, and he's quite impressed with him. He's like, you know, he's got a good record. We can't find anything against him. His wife, though, is a bad lot. So the wife, they talked about the investigation of her. When they get to they want to interview her, she sort of slips out. She goes out awfully quick, and where's she headed? She's going home. So they go after her. They go and they get to her house. They have her address. She's not there yet. So like she left 20 minutes before we did, but she's behind us, you know. Where did she go? Did she hide something? Did she have the treaty on her? So, and when they do come in and she comes in and she sees them there, she goes right into the kitchen and she goes to a place where it looks like you could hide things in. So, but she's got an answer for everything. You know, why did you leave late? Look, I don't get paid overtime. I was already worked over the time, and I got to get home and take care of the kids. Well, why did you leave earlier than we and get there later? Well, there's a difference between a bus and a hansom. I had to take public transportation and it doesn't go directly. And then, you know, well, why'd you go into the kitchen? And it looked like you were hiding something. She's like, no, I'm not hiding anything. She said, we had trouble with the bill collectors. And my husband was a little late paying for this furniture. I thought they were coming to collect it. We had money stashed away here. I could pay them out of this. So she has an answer for everything, but still Forbes is like, okay, we're gonna take it to the police station. We'll do a strip search. We're gonna have the female come in and we're gonna look through the clothing but they didn't find anything, of course. And then Lord Holdhurst himself, Holmes and Watson go to interview him, and he seems like a very up and guy, and Holmes has no suspicions about him. And Watson observes he seemed to represent that not too common type, a nobleman who is in truth noble. So, and then there's this one line, Watson's talking about Holmes, he's trying to figure him out and what his thinking is on the matter. And he says, Holmes, when he's so willed, he could have the immobility of countenance of a Red Indian, which today would be maybe an offensive statement, but it wasn't meant to be offensive. He just had this taciturn look, you know, and very focused. So
Bertillon system.
yeah, so thank you. So yeah, Holmes mentions the Bertillon system. And what is the Bertillon system? It's a system of measurements. I guess you can go on the next slide because it shows measurements. They did all sorts of measurements to figure out, like, classified criminals, everything from your ears, the distance between your eyes, the girth of the head, or the circumference of the head, the girth of your weight, fingertip to fingertip, head to toe, everything. And when fingerprints were suggested as a way, there was a big controversy because there were still a lot of supporters of the Bertillon system. But there were flaws with the system which led to mischaracterizing or mistaken identity. So one of these, back one, please, thank you. No, back forward one, that one. Now, the guy on the top is a guy named William West. The guy in the second one, below that, is Will West. It's not the same guy, it's two different guys. And put in jail because of the Bertillon system. But the guy in the top, well, I'm not sure which one is which, but one of them was really a criminal, was convicted and thrown in jail. The other one was totally innocent, but convicted and put in jail. So there were flaws. And then the next one, I had trouble, the system crops the head off. But these are two different guys, and you can see at least the jawline, they don't look quite as similar as the earlier photographs of the two guys named West. But you can see that, you know, they have the mustache and the general look. So I could see, if you were like at the crime scene and you saw the criminal and it was one of these guys, you didn't see him for 3 weeks or 3 months and the police brought you in and had a lineup, I could see how you could mistake the identity and, oh, that's the guy, even if they bring in the wrong one. So that's the Bachillion system.
Wasn't Bertillon French?
Yes. Yeah,
And he was one of the chief opponents of the fingerprint system because. his
Yeah,
system
yeah.
was getting-
because this is his baby. He thought, how could we lose? We're so sincere. We've got so many, and you only got the fingerprint. So, Holmes didn't want to go back down to Ridge Bay. And, they're sitting in the room with Percy Phelps, and Percy Phelps is feeling somewhat better. He's ready to get up and walk outside, and Holmes says, look, I want to look at the outside of the house. And Percy says, I'll go, and Joseph says, well, I'll come along with you. So it's the four of them so far, and then he says, yeah, I'll go too. And later Holmes says, you know, separates her from this. She says, no, I want you to stay here in this room all day. Don't let anything distract you. Don't let anything pull you out of the room. Stay here all day. When you go to bed, take the key, lock the door from the outside, and take it with you when you go to bed. Very important. And she looked a little bit miffed, but I think she understood this is important, and she went along with it. So now, Holmes did, you know, they examined the stuff, the property, and then he said to Percy, and Percy had this conspiracy theory. That's all he could come up with, you know. Can you explain what happened? That was his theory. So Holmes says to Percy, why don't you come up? You're feeling somewhat better. Come up to England. I think you'll be much better up there with us. I have some important things for you to attend to. And Percy's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. Let's, yeah. So watching Percy and Holmes go to the train station, Holmes puts them on the carriage and he says, oh, by the way, I'm not going to get on with you. I'm going to stay here. I'll be up in time for breakfast in the morning. And of course, Percy's like, it doesn't know Holmes well enough yet to understand that this unnatural reaction is quite natural for Holmes in some ways. But they go up, Watson and Percy go up to London. Holmes stays down. He takes a nice walk in the countryside. He hides himself out all afternoon. At night, he sees the perpetrator breaking into the bedroom. And it turned out to be Joseph Harrison. He couldn't get into the room because he went into the room, it was his bedroom. He found a way to hide the document. But when he was ushered out, he couldn't get back in. There was always the nurse. Well, Annie Harrison in the daytime was his nurse, and Percy was there. And at night, when Annie went to sleep, they hired a nighttime nurse to take care of him. So Joseph couldn't get into the room this whole time. So now he goes in, he gets the document, and he sneaks out right into Holmes's hands. Now he had with him it's actually a long knife. He wasn't using it as a knife. He was using it as a tool to give leverage to get the window open from outside because he wanted to do that. He could push it through the cracks in the window to get the lock, to push that away. But now that he's confronted with Holmes, he attacks Holmes. Holmes gets a nasty cut, but he gets the document back. And he kind of lets Joseph Harrison go, not because of any moral concern for him, but he thinks that the office, the home office or the foreign office maybe wouldn't care for the publicity, so. So, Holmes has a document, goes back, as he promised, he's there for breakfast. Percy's still like upset because he doesn't know the answer, he doesn't know Holmes has it yet. And Holmes plays a prank on Percy. They're at breakfast, he says, well, Holmes says, Mrs. Hudson has a Scotch woman's, even though her cuisine is a bit limited, she has a Scotch woman's idea of what a good breakfast should be. So Mrs. Hudson brings out the plate, the dinner plate, puts one on the setting before, right in front of Percy, and it's got a cover on it. And Holmes says, why don't you start in, Percy, pick up the cover, and Percy's like so dejected, he's like, I'm sorry, I just don't feel like eating. Well, I have this wound on my hand. Well, maybe you can help me. Can you lift it? And Percy looks at him like, yeah, okay. So he picks it up. And what does he see? Holmes says, put the tree. And poor Percy, he's up, he's all excited. He's like, oh. And then he goes into a fit. He's like, and Holmes is like, Watson, brandy. So here's the end of it. Holmes has solved it, and like, who's the perpetrator? Now he's got to tell him that his brother-in-law to be was the perpetrator of this. And he said, does Annie know yet? No, you know, I'm gonna let you tell her that. But she's coming up, she's gonna be here in within an hour or so. And let me just tell you that without her cooperation, you would not have this document in your pocket now. So that's basically the story. Do we have comments, questions?
Yeah, what is brain fever?
It's that Victorian malady that's so common at the
What do you
time.
think that it is?
I think it could be any, like maybe if you break out into a sweat from,
It's COVID.
How about a nervous breakdown?
A nervous breakdown, anxiety.
Gail, you were gonna say something.
I have a bad memory, but one name I never forgot in 50 years is Joseph Harrison. Whenever I read the story, even after years and years,
Yeah.
I always remember his name.
I think,
Tom,
Sandy,
oh, sorry.
Sandy wants
Hold
to say something. Sandy,
One of our own.
Yes, I know that this goes against something that people have been talking about for years, but I don't think Holmes was right about the thing. I think he was trying to just let time pass for one reason or another, because you know and I know that the smell of a rose and the color of a rose has nothing to do with us and how much we appreciate it. And it has everything to do with ensuring that the next generation of roses won't be inbred. So that it will attract the insects, it will fertilize them as the roses are fertilized by insects. And then they will have genes from a different rose, and so they will retain their health. That has nothing to do with a gift to us. It's a gift to the roses, but it's not a gift to us.
Yeah, I couldn't hear all of it. Sorry, Sandy. That was
Oh,
Sandy,
okay,
right?
it's
talking?
in the chat, but that's not gonna help you. The idea is that it's not a gift to us, it's a gift to the flower, because insects fertilize the roses. They enable them to have a next generation. We don't. It's not for us, it's a gift to the roses to keep them going.
Yeah, there's a footnote in the Baring Gould version that talks about, roses may be more important than Holmes seemed to say in that statement.
and Alan had his hand raised as well.
Yeah,
Martin, did you have something?
Yeah, well, I was just going to comment something out while you're talking. I was looking at the Wikipedia on my computer about 19th century text duplication, and I see there are actually a whole list of different ways that people did mechanical duplication of documents in that period, and so that makes one wonder why they had this presumably well-paid person in their department hand copying a very important document, one where if he makes a mistake when he's tired working late at night, it's not a good thing for a treaty. Why they did not use some form of mechanical duplication? It's of course, story wouldn't work so well without it, but it just seemed to me an implausibility.
Sorry. And it was in French, was it not his first language?
Yeah.
Thank you for that observation.
Another point, how does the whole soliloquy about the rose relate to the story? To me,
It's
more like-
a little addition that doesn't relate to the rest of the story. It just adds to the beauty of the world so we can appreciate it, just like the rose itself in Holmes's point of view.
Yeah, it just seemed like padding to me.
Did Sandy have a limerick? We couldn't hear it before. Did you have a limerick?
Oh, do I have a limerick? Let's see. Did I print it out or
she's
do I
got
have
a
to go hunt it up?
Tom, are you gonna say something? Okay.
Did I not print it? Okay, give me you do something else and I'll get to the limerick and do it in a minute. Okay, I just have to pull it up.
Bill?
Yeah, there were a couple of peculiarities of the British language in the story, but one of them was
So
But
why
Holmes-
doesn't type it out?
not the perpetrator leaving the house. They had a tussle, and he says, "I grasped him twice."
Yeah,
So I'd never seen that before. He grasped him twice.
Yes.
Thrown him to the ground twice.
yeah. And I chevied Percy around the playground.
I think it means knock him down.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Bill?
You're talking about Holmes's religion. And it seems to me that Holmes was most likely Church of England. He came from landed gentry. His brother rose high in the British government, which I think would not have been as feasible if they were not Church of England. Winwood Reade, who he recommended, was not an atheist, but he was a secularist, and he's also pretty much anti-Catholic. So I think Holmes probably fit in that mold. Not an atheist, but not particularly religious.
Yeah.
More of a secular oriented person like that. And because of his brother's position in government, I think the Holmeses were probably Church of England.
Yeah, but could it also been, those summers he had to spend in France because of his French heritage? That, of course, there's very little written about that. But was he spending summer in a Catholic, was he spending some times in a Catholic environment where they were pounding that into an
Remember,
university?
he comes from a lot of Anglo-Saxon people who came from,
Oh, I know.
not Anglo-Saxon, but the Norman.
And where did the Normans come
After all,
from?
landed
Yeah.
gentry survived the Henry VIII purges of Catholics, so I still think he's most likely Church of England. And the Winwood Reade thing kind of sealed it for me.
Okay, Jeff, at your leisure.
Still, I thought he was raised Catholic. Or was it Anglican? I thought it was Catholic. Doyle. And then he became an atheist under,
Doyle was Catholic.
yeah.
Doyle was never an atheist. Connor Doyle's never an atheist.
He's spiritual.
Okay, I had read that.
Spiritualist, but he was certainly not an atheist. I mean, that spiritualism and atheism are incompatible. At least they were in his mind.
I have 6 or 7 biographies on my shelf. I suppose it's time to read them.
Jeff, at your leisure.
Yes, Sandy.
You want me to, okay.
Here we go.
Wait 1 second. Okay, here we go. You've been asked to copy a treaty, though you know it's a very dull featy. Never leave it. What's more, check the lock on the door, then no problems, you'll soon wed your sweetie. But that rising young diplomat Percy needed Holmes' brain and a good dash of mercy. His fiancée was the sister of a criminal twister, and Holmes solved it all for young Percy. The end.
Hey. Thank you.
Excellent, thank
That's
you.
great.
Other thoughts?
The line which I could look up, but in both, it was in this story, something to the effect of the authorities have a whole bunch of facts, but don't know what to do with them.
Right.
I was reminded of that other famous line about you see, but you do not observe.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good.
Tom was gonna mention something and then he.
Yeah, at the beginning of the story, did it say that Watson had just been married 3 weeks and that he
Oh, yeah.
showed a letter to his wife? And she encouraged him to go run off with Sherlock Holmes and
Yeah.
take the case.
Wow. At the beginning of the story, it refers to other cases, including the second stain, which had not been written at that point. And ironically, when the second stain was written, it largely recycled this plot line with a hidden document that's going to destroy the man's reputation. It has international consequences, and it's hidden someplace, in a room that they have to trick people to find it. A whole lot of that's reworked in that later story.
Well, the grouping of the stories we're studying is purposeful. We did second stain last time. We're doing naval treaty now. Next time it's the Bruce Party.
Yeah.
So it's all these government documents, intrigues all in a row. I think it's hopefully, I don't know who's doing next month's story, but
I got it.
I think some mention of how these all relate to each other might be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do this.
I do have to wonder, as Drew pointed out about Dr. Watson, and I look at all of you and he held you in high esteem, but now I wonder how many of you were schoolyard bullies.
Was it Percy Phelps' dog that bit Holmes on the shin, or was that somebody else? Oh, okay. Different guy.
Well, I just remembered, Holmes, Doyle, his last 10 years, he was a fervent, spiritualist.
Yeah.
Right.
And he took a lot of a lot of people make fun of him because of that.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
A lot of flack, yeah. Well, especially the pictures of the fairies that he was totally taken in by.
Yeah.
But his school of spiritualism that he started is still alive and well in Edinburgh. I was just there.
Giving up the ghost, yeah.
Oh. That's good of what I was gonna say. Before to him, I was just gonna say that it gave a lasting impression. I would suggest by framing in an easy to communicate system
Yeah.
of what he thought spiritualism was. And the more you look at spiritualism, the more it runs off the deep end. But he was in his way seemingly consistent. And he developed it. As he developed it, people looked to him for guidance to update their own knowledge, like a religious leader. Therefore, his spiritualism was a religious motif or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I consider the room full of Southern Baptists,
Yeah,
and every one of them is different. You know,
that's true.
You can't say you're a Catholic, therefore you believe this.
Yeah.
Well, let me point out though that the fairy thing and spiritualism were incompatible with each other in some ways. They were separate in his mind from each other, and even other spiritualists didn't go along with that. And Conan Doyle thought spiritualism was very logical. People, we all think, how is this so incompatible with Sherlock Holmes' character? But in Conan Doyle's mind, it was a logical progression. To us, it seems ridiculous, or to most of us, I assume.
Yeah.
It seems ridiculous. But in his mind, it was a very logical step in his intellectual development. seems very naive now, but, for him at the time, he thought it was logical. And as I say, there's still a spiritualist church in New York, I know that, and other places around the world. They still function.
And it started upstate New York with the Fox sisters in America. And then it spread around the world. At least a revival of it.
Well, we should note that Doyle's favorite series character, Professor Challenger, does graduate to becoming a believer in spiritualism in some of his stories. Perhaps Doyle, if we take the Doyleist view, just recognized it was incompatible with the personality of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Whereas the more imaginative Professor Challenger would learn the truth as Doyle would see it.
The land of mist.
Yes.
Good observation.
Good.
Anybody else?
Where is the card for Billy? Somewhere over there? I'm gonna put it down. Chris.
So who did ring the bell at the end?
It was Joseph Harrison. Oh, that's right. I left that part out. What they, there was a possibility that Joseph was going to London and that he'd be going home the same time that Percy would get out of work. So they'd go together on the train. And what happened was, and he had already been given a tour of the place. The whole family had visited Percy at one time or another, so he showed them around. So he was familiar enough with it to come in off the street, which surprises me that they didn't have better security even at that time. This is Downing Street. There's a sensitive place. So anyway, Joseph comes in at the same time that Percy goes down to get his coffee and to check with, so Percy's in the lodge, what they call the lodge, where the commissioner is. Joseph comes in, he doesn't see him, he pulls the bell, and then he sees the document, pulls it and escapes. So he's gone, it's just the timing, split second timing. So he just was seizing the advantage. Anyone else?
Seriously, curry chicken for breakfast?
Well, I think, well,
Prepared by a Scotswoman too.
That's number one dish in the UK.
And apparently he must have asked for it because she served Watson eggs. And he had got a treat he wanted. But they got what they wanted.
What did you say? The same people that brought you haggis,
Curry
right?
chicken is the number
Haggis,
one dish.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's good.
because India has been there.
No, repeat that when they go, I'll make sure to listen.
Well, curry chicken is the number one dish in the UK.
Oh.
I was told this. Not sure if it's breakfast, but it's like the most, like, pretty much any restaurant you go into, like, whichever restaurant, they would have a curry on their menu.
but they would probably have, they would be buffet, from my experience. They might have a dozen different curries.
Yeah.
You can choose from. But as I was trying to be cute, but I'd also say something's wrong with somebody that wants to eat curry. You're ruining your taste buds.
Other thoughts? Ideas?
What a great day. Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Jim?
So, next month, we do not meet at, Porky's. We'll send a note out about that. That we meet at Gail Stalls and Susan Stalls. The address is Needmore, what is it?
1759.
1759 Needmore Road.
Will the trash can be at the street? That's all I want to know.
Exactly what I was gonna ask.
Right.
11 is okay, or is that too early? You want to meet later?
Don't do with me.
11's fine.
Okay.
Whatever, everybody's most
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. Let's keep it
It'll
simple.
be like a drop in.
Yeah.
Can't make it 11, come in.
All right, spread the word.
11 o'clock?
Yeah.
11
Is that
o'clock.
okay?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Billy.
Thank you all. We will reconvene in March, so we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Bye, everybody. See y'all online.